All right, today I wanted to talk about Arcane, which is a Netflix show designed by, or produced by Netflix, but made by a French studio. Very interesting looking up them. The art style is actually kind of reminding me a lot of Dishonored, the game series Dishonored, if you're familiar with them at all. But basically, Arcane is a TV show, and what we have is we are immediately introduced into I guess it's a League of Legends story, if anyone is familiar with that video game. But basically what we're introduced with as the story begins is we're immediately thrown into a war-torn area. This is kind of a classic introduction to everything, because what it does is immediately throws the audience into a scenario which they're immediately asking, what's going on? What caused this? What made this happen? There's a lot of questions that come with this. And so what we're thrown into this war-torn. There's a scary guy with a mask and a rifle who runs through. And then we have two kids that we are introduced to. One of them is a girl with pink hair, and she is tall. And then girl 2 is short. So these are the two characters that we're introduced to, and they are scared and wandering through this whole area, and you don't fully understand what is going on. All you do understand, though, is that a whole bunch of people are dying and have died. There's basically smoke everywhere. There's fire. There's people lying on the ground. And it's pretty rough situation. They're absolutely terrified. And so what does this do? Immediately what it does is we understand this is a war-torn zone. And then we have two characters who are scared. What this is going to do is this is going to establish sympathy for these two characters. This is what it is. So this is a great way to introduce. We're immediately interested in finding out what's happening. And then they look around and they see this one guy who's beating up somebody, and he comes up to them and he gives them a sympathetic look and kind of takes them under. And we understand that this other character, this other guy who's punching people, is taking them under his wing. He's going to take care of them. And then he seems nice, and then we cut there. So this is the intro. So immediately, this is like first 2 minutes. What does this do? It gives us a lot to work with. We have war-torn, so we have conflict. We have good guys versus bad guys. The scary guy with the rifles, probably bad guy. A bunch of dead people who look like innocent civilians, probably good guys. It gives us an idea of the technology. It's kind of a Victorian magic area so far is the hint you get so far, but nothing doesn't really set too much in motion there. But this is good in the fact that what it does is I am interested, because I want to see what happens next, which is obviously the most important aspect for any of your stories that you're kind of working through or writing, or any of them that you're watching, is the audience pulled in to find out what happens next? And the answer for this one, for me, was yes. So from here, we do a time skip. We basically time skip, and you can kind of understand what's going on, that this is a jump forward, because the characters are older, they're much more established, they're no longer scared running around. And what we're introduced with is to the gang. And the gang consists of 4 members. We have Vi, who's the leader. She is girl 1 in this. She has the pink hair. She's the oldest and kind of the leader of the group. We have Powder. This is girl 2. She's shorter and has blue hair. And then we're introduced to Mylo and Claggor. What's the guy's name? I think it's Claggor. Yeah, Claggor is his name. All right, Claggor. All right. Mylo's kind of a skinny, Weasley sort of fellow. Claggor is kind of a hardier, we'll put him that way. He's got a little bit more meat on him from there. And what they're doing is we're immediately introduced to, they're trying to sneak in to some place. And what they're doing is they're trying to jump. All right, so what we're introduced is they're trying to do this jump. So what we have is basically you're supposed to slide down here, jump across to this one, come around to the front here, and then jump across to the other building. And it's pretty perilous, because it is probably about 100 foot, 200 foot down. So you're going to die or get seriously injured if you're doing this. They're obviously not doing this with a harness. And so what we have is we have Vi. And again, think of what you're trying to do in an action sequence or any sort of sequence like this is you're trying to communicate a few things at once. You want to build on who the characters are. So we got some exposition here. So we're trying to figure out the character dynamic. We would like to tell more about the backstory, if you can kind of go into that. And then character dynamic, anything like this will tell us more about this in terms of who the characters are. So think of that in terms of if you're ever having an action sequence, you want it to try to be accomplish as many things as possible in this aspect, because we want to make the audience care about it. Because right now, obviously, we care about girl 1, girl 2, and we're very sympathetic towards them. This kind of endears us towards them, but that will not last. That is not going to stay forever. But we are sympathetic to them, but not necessarily to the other two characters. Because again, what we've established by introducing these two characters, Vi and Powder, is this is our point of view. We are looking at everything from their point of view. The other two are outsiders, essentially, for that. So what we have is basically they go, so Vi jumps first. Again, we've established Vi is the leader. Mylo goes next. Claggor goes third, and then Powder is going to go fourth, but Powder hesitates. And so what we hear is we have a dynamic where Milo's making all these jabs. So he's kind of playing the soft, if you want to say soft villain character, a main character, good guy villain, where he's the jerk, basically, of the group. And so they all jump across, and Powder is very scared to go across because it's 100, 200 foot down, and you'll certainly die or fall or something like that. It's pretty bad. So she's hesitating, and then Vi kind of talks her into it, and she finally makes the jump, and lands only to almost fall off, and then Vi ends up rescuing her. And again, we have this dynamic. What is this communicating? Well, Vi is continually building up Powder and pushing her to expand on her limits and also saving her. You have this dynamic where Vi is very much saving her from there. So they go through here, and they're sneaking into this warehouse where there's all those, or this laboratory that they're sneaking into, which has all these doodads and gizmos and what's. And obviously at this point, it becomes apparent, if it wasn't before, they're here to rob from here. They're here to rob and steal anything of value that they can find. And lo and behold, as you may not know, Powder ends up finding some stuff in these little blue balls, which she doesn't really know what they do. She grabs they grab a bunch of valuables. And then the ball drops, and it starts sparking and, lightning and all this other stuff. And then eventually it explodes from here. And so what we have at this point, what's caused this is somebody's coming back. So they're trying to hide, and somebody's coming back. And so they, put the chair in front of the door to try and keep somebody from getting in so they can get some time to escape. But in that, while they're trying to escape, they explode. And so it seems the heist is going wrong, and that's because it actually is. So they're they make reference to this top side, bottom side, so you can kind of tell that there definitely is some sort of class issue that's going on here. We have a wealth gap, and what they're trying to do is they're very much trying to steal for money, for glory. There's kind of a few things that's going in from here. So they're made. The explosion does not help alert people that something nefarious is going along, so now they are on the run, and we have a chase sequence. And so far, I just want to point out, as far as this goes, one thing that makes the show so good is the animation is absolutely beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. It's kind of like every Dishonored, but everything is better looking. And this is not to insult the artistic quality of Dishonored, but more just that Dishonored definitely has a sort of grotesque art style for it. You can tell by people's hands and chins and faces. There's this kind of this dark, macabre sort of a look that everybody has to them. So this kind of eliminates that while kind of making it bright and vibrant and very Victorian, much more light Victorian, as opposed to the dark world of Dunwall and the other town that you play in the second one, which I can't remember. From there, so they're on the run, and what this does is, if you think about it in terms of what we're trying to position the audience, is basically in step one, we are making it so they are sympathetic. Our two girls are sympathetic from here. And the other thing then is, so they're sympathetic, and we're trying to see, and then they're trying to do this heist. And from this point, we see Mylo is picking on Powder, And so we are rooting for Powder to succeed because the point of view was established. So we are going to take her side. Also, she's very sympathetic. She's a younger girl. She's trying to make her, make her way in the world. They're poor. They have all this stuff. Everything's stacked against them. Mylo's being a jerk against them, so we want them to succeed. Something goes wrong, or the explosion and the balls go wrong, and then now they're on the run from the cops. So what this does is this engages the audience. So what it is the audience has a choice to root for the cops or root for the gang. And at this point, if it's not obvious, obviously they're going to choose the gang. But what you're doing, which you may not notice, is you are forcing the audience to pick one of these two options. You can't have the audience cannot stand by. You can't simply stand by and not care what's going on. You have to care, which means, because of how we've set this up, obviously they're going to root for the gang. So what you're doing is you're making the audience act upon this sort of deal. And this is really key. This is kind of something that the Witcher 3 does excellently in all of their quests, is they'll give you two meh options, and then you just got to own it. And you got to go, this is my decision. And then at that point, what is interesting is I think you'll find is that when you do these choices and then somebody presses you on it, when you make a choice and then somebody goes, well, why did you make that choice? You'll start justifying it. And then you'll get even more convinced that your choice was correct. And this is something that you want to do for the audience, is you want the audience to own the decisions. Either the own decisions that they're making, and Choose Your Own Adventures, Baldur's Gate, Witcher 3, any of these Persona, any of these games where you can kind of pick your own character or pick your own, the way you play your character. For these type of stories where you obviously can't pick it, you want to set it up so the audience chooses it. So now we are sold. We are hoping the gang gets away. And so that's awesome at this point. So the gang basically runs away. And they do escape the cops, and they go down kind of to the, not quite to the lower levels, but they're traveling, and they are actually jumped by a rival gang. They finally get away, and they're jumped seemingly by a rival gang. So these are not cops anymore at this point. And this is good because you kind of have nonstop action from this point, because you have the war-torn war zone, to the heist, to running away from the cops, and now to facing a rival gang from here. And all this will be explained how it all connects from here. But at this point, it's still action. So we're kind of going from one sequence to the next, which is good because so far everything's been really interesting. So we're getting pulled in. Because again, the most important thing for episode 1 is to make you want to watch episode 2. It's to get you on to that next point. Because usually I think you'll find with most TV shows, the watch time, everybody's watching episode 1 and then it goes like that. That's generally how it works in terms of people watching TV shows. And so what you're trying to do, and this is probably true not only for the whole season, this is probably very true for the episode. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep all of these people and make sure they see it through to the end. You want them to actually watch to the end of it. Because then, at the end of the episode, we can leave a hook. You can leave 5 minutes towards the end to where it kind of hooks into the dun-dun-dun-dun ominous thing that's going to happen next. And then you can pull them into the next episode from there. So, the rival gang jumps them, and then they fight. So, this is 1, it's good because it's an action sequence. 2, it's good because it's a changing in tempo. You can't have action sequences where everything is at red alert. Because otherwise red alert stops to mean as much. So basically what you can see here is because it's a rival gang, it's other kids, they're older from here, but instead of being imprisoned and probably executed or something, you're just going to get beat up. So we go from red alert to like orange alert or yellow alert from there. So it's good because we have action sequence, but 2, it's kind of a nice letdown in tempo because we hate these guys because there's thieves, who are trying to steal our ill-gotten gains from here. But at the same point, it's not constant red alert. You can't have red alert constantly because if we had a 40-minute chase scene from the cops, eventually it would get boring. So we have to change it up, and it is a nice side bonus. That's just a change in tempo from here. So they beat up the rival gang, but in this, Powder accidentally loses the loot bag, and it goes underwater and vanishes from there. And Powder escapes. And they all go down to what's called topside. They go down an elevator. And then you get to see that there's two different, this is where the richer people live, and this is where the poorer people live. And they go down the elevator to connect it, and you can kind of see very much the class struggle, and you can understand this is entering the underworld of sorts. And so now, at this point, we jump to a slightly different point of view. There's this nerdy looking fellow who's at this bar called like the Last Drop, and he's going and he's like, all right, we made a deal. And with these two other guys, they're sitting around a table, and you can tell he's a nerd because he's got glasses. And this guy's a very scary looking fellow. Despite the smile, do not let it describe, because he's got a big beard, and this other lady who's here with a knife or something. And they're wheeling and dealing, and then they're like, we're going to pay you way less. And he's like, why? And then what happens is it turns out the nice gentleman from before, the guy who took them under his wing, shows up, and we get a little bit more. This is the famous Vander. So immediately we've established him, because these guys end up being kind of scared of him because he forces them to actually be honest in their dealings. And so Vander is established as a very powerful character. He's kind of a ruling authority. You know, he's very powerful. Everybody recognizes him. So he's kind of the Gandalf, the mentor figure, if you'll call it like that. And of course, being the mentor figure, he sees it when the four characters sneak back in, trying to pretend like they didn't try and go rob anything from there. And they sneak in. I keep picking on Claggor, so I do apologize. But they're all sneaking back in, and Vander, of course, knows exactly what's going on because he's heard, he's not an idiot and everything. And so he starts interrogating them. And think of what we've done so far with this heist. This is an aspect that did really good. We have established all the differences between the gang. You know, Powder's a younger girl. You know, she's trying to she's trying to live up to the expectations of her peers. She's trying to do all this aspect. Mylo is, you know, much more Weasley guy. He's a jerk, kind of a jerk. He rags on people. But he's also skilled. He's actually pretty good, probably the second one of the other thieves. Claggor doesn't really say a whole lot, but you can kind of tell he is looking after Powder. He's much more of he's a pretty nice guy. So we kind of have a general moral upright. He's a good guy. Maybe that'll be better. He's a good guy. And then we have Vi, who's the brash leader. You know, there's a scene where Milo's trying to pick the lock to this door, and Vi just comes up and kicks it open. And I don't really know how to show the door getting kicked open. But this is kicking happening. From there. And so you're using this action sequences to clearly define what makes each character unique. And so this is, at this point, we know what makes each of the characters tick. It's very clear at this point. The dialogue has done a great job articulating this and kind of clearly explaining this. And this is something that they've done a great job with. From there. So Vander gives Vi a extreme talking down, basically saying this is very bad. This is very, 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 very bad. You're gonna have to lay low. This is gonna get bad. You could have gotten people killed. You are the leader. You are failing in your job. He basically gives her a real big talking down. But again, we've established this guy as the mentor role. So this makes sense now because he's saying, Vi, you immediately establish him as leader because he's telling everyone else how to be a leader. And it's a really good moment from here because you can he's playing the role of the father figure as well, because you can kind of almost assume that all these kids are orphans or something like that, where they don't really have anyone looking after them. From there. And at least until this point, we can see that Vander's like, did you guys lose everything? And she's like, yes, we lost it. And he's like, good. And this is a great moment. This is really good because we went through this whole heist and we really wanted something good to come out of it. You know, we had our hopes were aligned with the gang. They went to all of this to get the goods, and then Powder lost it. And then Vander's coming in saying, actually, it's really good that it's just gone. Like, we don't have to mess with it. We don't have to hide it. Like, it's actually really good that it's just gone. Thank goodness. And so now we don't even feel bad. That is a complete flop. The audience, we don't feel bad that is a flop. In fact, we're kind of glad. We're like, thank goodness we got Vander's approval on this one. But Vander immediately notices in the story that, hey, who told you where this job was? It seems very suspicious that there was a rival gang of younger kids that was waiting to jump you from there. And so he goes and heads to a shop. He goes to a shop. So he's information snooping from here. Information snooping. So he's going to a shop with a big guy sitting behind the counter. I don't really know how to draw this big guy. So be warned, he's going to come out horrible. And Vander is here, and he's a very big guy as well, with his little fisties, and he's barrel-chested south from here. And these are the two guys, and then they are going to talk. We're also introduced to another kid whose name is Echo, and again, they do have a great job of making these characters kind of defining them very well so far. So we're introduced to him, but he immediately kind of goes. And the interesting thing is Vander picks Claggor to come and tell him what happened, give him, the play-by-play. And you kind of understand, because Claggor's kind of the goody two-shoes, or not the goody two-shoes, he's the closest to the goody two-shoes. He's the guy, he's the one who's smart. He never would openly stand against Vi, but he probably knows this whole thing is a bad idea. So Vander's trusting his perspective, and I agreed with it, which is good, because that means that they clearly defined what your characters are like, which is good, because this is really key, because otherwise everyone's going to blend together. So they start talking, and they're trying to talk about goods and what's going on and who may have informed, and there's kind of this tension, because you don't know, did this skeevy shopkeeper sell them out? And at this point, we get the guards, the enforcers, what they call the enforcers, show up. Because apparently what they stole made a lasting, a big splash from here. And you get an idea in terms of the relationship between the enforcers, because Echo is eavesdropping, and we're kind of seeing a little bit of this from his perspective. And there's two guards. There's the young guard, and there's the lady guard, these two people. The young guard is treating them with disdain and derision and all this stuff like this. So you can understand this is the generic viewpoint of the guards up top. They look down on everyone and hate everyone below. There's very much this class, oppressor-oppressee rivalry. And this works great because everybody hates a bully, and this bullying someone like this is you'll win points very easily. We immediately understand who's the good guy in this situation. So the lady guard tells the young guard to take a hike because he needs to cool off, and she starts talking to Vander saying, listen, we had a deal. You keep the peace down here. You police everything down here, and I will keep the enforcers off the streets. And he's like, listen, I'm trying. I'm going to handle this. Leave it to me. And she goes, no, this has gotten too big now. It's big up top. I need the person behind it. Give them to me. Give them up. And Vander, and again, so far Echo's eavesdropping, and you think there's going to be this tension with maybe Vander, he's going to think Vander is this betraying us. But no, it comes immediately apparent that Vander's like, nope, I'm not giving him up. I can't do that. And she goes, listen, you need to give them to me. And this is a great moment so far, because whenever you're thinking about people's actions or characters' actions, it has to make sense. Which is, why does the audience understand why a character would do this? Does an audience member understand why Vander is policing the underground? We do, immediately. Why? It's on my other page. But the war-torn area, you understand what's going to happen. You get this strong hint of what will happen if he doesn't maintain control. We understand why Vi has broken that control. She's trying to prove herself. She's trying to make something out for herself. She wants something better. She doesn't understand why they have to just keep taking, all of this cruelty and all this unfairness from everyone on the top side, up rich side from here. And she doesn't understand that. We also understand why the lady guard is here, because, hey, Powder blew up a giant laboratory, or blew up part of a laboratory. You know, this is not going to stand. We have to do something about this. Every character makes sense so far. And this is not a big thing. Well, it's a big thing when it isn't. And I just like to highlight this because when it's done well, you don't notice it. It basically goes completely unseen, which is really great. It's like the dialogue. So far, the show has had great dialogue because you don't notice it. It just happens. It flows naturally. No one goes, ooh, anything like that. It's not beyond amazing or anything like that, but it doesn't have to be. It has to be good. It has to communicate all these things. And so far, it's doing exactly that, which means it doesn't have to do anything from there. And so they start talking at that point, and then Vi and Powder talk, and Vi's, trying to cheer Powder up. So we understand that Vi is just a great person. She's really looking after this girl who's basically either her younger sister or playing the role of the younger sister for all intents and purposes from there. And at this point, we are at, 35 minutes into the show or anything like that. And this is where we can start laying the breadcrumbs. Remember, I mentioned you can kind of end your episode in a dun 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 dun. This is what will be continued. And so what we have is we have an ominous man who shows up. And it turns out he's behind the rival gang. And then he experiments and shows you this thing where he has this purple juice, which they give to a rat, and then the rat then eats a cat. It's a really ugly cat, but we didn't really want the cat to have to die for it. Very ominous man who's basically talking about, my plans, talking about plans in the shadowy plans. And so we're given kind of an idea of the greater villain that's going to be working for us, and we can kind of pull this off. Because what you never want to happen is you always want to kind of flitter. We talked in the last video, kind of flittering plot points so that they can come up at a different point, because what you want is you want the plot to look like this, and you'll have a moment here and that comes up here, and you have a moment here and that comes up here, and you have a moment here which comes up here. And what it does is it allows you to have stuff that happens and it doesn't seem fake. It doesn't seem like you're pulling out of a hat from here. And so we're introducing the Shadow Man with his dark plans. And this is the reason why is that presumably when dark plans, shadowy plans happen, we will understand where they're coming from. They're not coming out of a vacuum from here at this point. But yeah, and so far, episode 1 has just been absolutely killed it. It's hit it on every single mark for me. So they've done just a phenomenal job with this show. I can understand now why it is pulled in so many people. And it has done the most important job, which is it really makes me want to watch episode 2. So, I hope you guys learned something, and I will see you in the next one.